Okay guys, so now we get to start the fun part, and basically we got 9 bolts and nuts that we got to remove in order to get our intake manifold off, and it's a total of 9 fasteners. It's a mix of bolts and nuts, not 9 of each. We don't have 18. So the first one, we've got all of the ones on the bottom are setting directly beneath these little tubes here, these little aluminum pipes, which is part of your intake manifold. So they're setting directly under. Now on top, they're in between, so the bolt would be there, there, and there, and there, and on the other side. And beneath they're gonna be below, 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 below. Okay, so, and the other weird thing I found on this one, it may not be a problem, but I'm assuming it's gonna be a problem because I don't think anything funny has happened to this one, but the bolts are 13 millimeters and the nuts are 12 millimeters. The one I'm sitting down on here is gonna be the one directly below here. It's gonna be a 12 millimeter nut. The next one over is a 13 millimeter bolt. Then I believe there's another 13 millimeter bolt and then a 12 millimeter nut. And then up top you can see them all. I'll go ahead and I'll take a look at one. There's a 12 millimeter nut and there is a 13 millimeter bolt. So the ones up top are pretty easy, and you can get that first nut I showed you, you can get a ratchet and 12 millimeter socket on it without a problem. The other ones, you may have to take a wrench and just be patient, break it loose, and then you should be able to take it out with your fingers. And then, but for the bottom ones here, I'll show you. I've got the extension positioned on each one, and that one I was not able to touch and then slip on with my hand. Like a lot of times I'll hold the extension with socket on it with this hand and then feel with these 2 fingers and then I'll slip it on. But this one I had to kind of stick the extension back in there with the socket on the end and feel it until I caught it, and then once I caught it I just held it there and then I hooked my ratchet up and then I was able to break it loose. Now next I'll show you what my setup's gonna look like for the other 3. Okay guys, now we got that one out. That was the nut. Now we got a 13 millimeter bolt here and here. Now I skipped showing you the extension on this one. I skipped over to the next one because I already took that one out, but I will show you before it's all over what it looks like when you got your extension on that one. And basically we're gonna look down in here, and yeah, we can see that extension is way back there underneath the intake manifold. Now I'm gonna go ahead and I'll put my socket right there on the end of the extension. I'll lefty-loosey that bolt right out. Alright, now when you've got it hooked up to that farthest one to the left, that nut right there, which is 12 millimeters, you got an extension sitting right there, and then you'll be able to stick your ratchet down there, spin it left, and then you're gonna hold it with one hand while you remove the ratchet, and then you'll just use that extension as a screwdriver and completely remove the nut. Now the extension also is going to be sitting like right directly underneath that one for the bolt there. I could reset it up, but that's all you're going to see. It's just going to look like the one over here, and they're sitting pretty much directly underneath it, and that's pretty much it. So once I get that last nut out, which I've about got out, then we'll remove these top 5 ones, and I'll show you what it looks like when we're coming out with that intake manifold. Alright guys, now I've got one loosened up here, and I just want to show you the easiest way to use that extension and the socket as a screwdriver is to be I'm standing right here. Take your right arm, and then we're going to reach, and we're just going to, like, my head's kind of pointing down this way, and that's how I've arranged my hand. And it's much easier than trying to use your left hand to get in here and to do it like so. So that's how I was able to just kind of use this arm like that. That's what enabled me to do it more easily. So right now I'm just taking off I think second to the last bolt up here before we remove our intake manifold. So momentarily you'll see that bad boy coming right out. Alright, so now we've got all the fasteners off, and I'll just go ahead and lift up on this guy. We've got a few more hoses and stuff, but we are just replacing this gasket here, so I'm able to get it out of the way enough in order to replace the gasket. If you want to remove your whole intake manifold, so we've got one. And here's what we're looking like with the intake manifold actually sitting off. And again, the last thing you want to do is just pull that hose off there. That's pretty simple. And then there was just a 10 millimeter bolt going down there that had a bracket for all the wire and stuff. And I said you need to unplug some stuff or undo a nut up here. Really, there's just that one little bolt sitting right there. It's a 10 millimeter. and it had something coming off here and coming off here, and it was just a bracket, and you just take that off, and this piece just comes right off. Now, when going to put everything back together, one thing you want to make sure of is when we did this right here, we can see there's coolant in that all the way to the left cylinder. Now, if we put everything back on and leave that in there, there's a good chance that the engine will suck that up, and you could bend a connecting rod. So you either need to do one of two things. You need to stick some rags in there and soak all that up, or you can use an air nozzle here, which you may or may not have, and go ahead and just spray and make sure you get it really dry so you're not sucking up or gulping up a big thing of water, because that's definitely not good for the engine. So other than that, here in just a second I may or may not give you more instructions. Everything else is pretty much the reverse of the removal to install. I may tell you the torque specs for the bolts and nuts going back onto your engine, and I'll think of something else if I can. So we'll see what's next here in just a second. Okay guys, now as far as installing everything back together, well, like I said before, it is pretty much going to be the reverse of the removal to install. And the one thing I will tell you, if you want to torque these nuts and bolts down, it's going to be 14 to 19 foot-pounds. Now, I'm just going to go good and tight. And also, you may want to do an inside to outside pattern. And what I mean by that is we can see you've got a stud there, a hole there, a hole there, a hole there. So what I would do is probably go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I added something somewhere, but you get the idea. You start from the middle and then you work your way to the outside, and that's going to ensure that when the intake manifold is sealing up against the engine, it's going to make a good seal and everything's going to be happy. So just make sure you do it that way. And like I said, I'm just going to do good and tight. I'm not going to do the torque spec, because it'd be really difficult to get a torque wrench, even for yourself. And again guys, this project is not for the light of hearted people. So I almost forgot that when you do the fuel rail back into that thing when you're putting your fuel injectors back in, that torque spec is important as well. Just to give you an idea, 69 to 95 inch-pounds is what you're going to want to put on there, so you don't want to ramp it down there really well. So again, you can do just good and tight. Just again, it's going to be easier. You're just going to really snug it down, and that's all you really want to put on it. So again guys, that concludes today's video. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time. Okay guys, now I want to give you a piece of advice here. When using your extensions, I'll give you what extensions and combination you want to use when removing the bottom nuts here, with the 2 bolts and then the 2 nuts. Okay, so on the one all the way on the left, I've got a 4-inch extension here. At least I think it is, because I'm pretty sure it's a 2-inch and this is a 1-inch, and that's about 2 of those. So you're going to use a 4-inch on this bottom left with a 1-inch. So 1 inch on the back and a 4-inch in the front, and then your 13mm socket. Actually, I'm sorry, it's a 12mm socket there. Then for the rest of the bottom 3, what I use is the 4-inch and the 2-inch. Okay, now when we come up top, it's a little different too. Now for the first middle one, we've got 5 up top and we had 4 down at the bottom, but for this middle one right here, let me get our camera in focus. Okay, so for the middle one sitting right there, that nut, I didn't use any extension. I just used my ratchet and 12mm socket. For the rest of them, I used either a 2-inch or 1-inch socket. You'll figure it out. But the big pain is the bottom one, so you just need to know that. And like, I think I used a 2-inch extension there. Pretty much a 2-inch extension. You may need a 1-inch extension there for one of the upper ones, but I'm pretty sure it's a 2-inch extension, and that middle one is no extension. So there you go. That concludes my little tip giving thing with the extensions and getting to these guys right here. And also with the bottom one, I had that 4-inch extension. What I would do is I would set it up, and I would get my thing on there and I would set it there. Then I would add my 2-inch and I would hold it with one hand. Then I would add my ratchet. So that's how I went about setting up the ratchet and extensions. Also, another thing, when you're going to put these guys back on, what you can do is you can get you some wheel bearing grease, or you can hawk a big loogie. Either one works, but I prefer to use the grease. And you can put that in the end of your socket. Let's see right here. You can put it in the end of your socket, and what that will allow you to do is it'll allow the bolt to stick on, so when you're going to put your bolts back on, they won't be falling off, and you can stick them on the end and then just shove it in there and twist it on. And really the 2 bolts in the middle, I used my fingers and spun it on with my fingers, and I turned around with my right arm and stuck it in. But the 2 nuts, you're not going to be able to do that. With the 2 nuts, you need to grease it into a socket and then kind of fish for it and twist it on. That's how you'll go about putting your 2 nuts on, by using that grease method. And then up top, I use the grease method with an extension and just kind of screwdrivered it in there. So that's how I got to putting those things back on, and those are the combinations I use and that sort of thing. So there you go. Now that concludes my little extension and grease tip piece of information there. Hope it helps.
Thanks for watching, guys, and don't forget to subscribe so you can catch all my new videos, which publish Mondays and Fridays at 9 a.m. Pacific Time, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, 11 a.m. Central Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, and I will see you then.